Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Issei had female Vali as his girlfriend part 3. Before I start, please do support for more awesome content and subscribe my channel and like this video. Though support and follow the Nefarious doctor for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story, link in the description. Let's start this video. Issei saw the news and called Vali to explain the situation. Vali saw the news as well, and the two of them decided to meet up and come up with a plan. Issei took Toyotama, Ichiya, Kazuhana, Yume, along with Yahin, Pandora, and Areha. They made their way to the garden where the giant forest was holding the last 3 Sekirei. There were armed vehicles and officers standing outside and keeping watch over the area. Issei knew they could easily take them out, but he didn't want to worry about collateral damage. We can't kill them, so what do we do? A pebble hit him in the head. Issei looked up to see Vali on the roof of the building. He waved his hand to come up. Issei and his team to see Vali with Hibiki, Hikari, Matsu, Iki, and Kuno. It seems that Vali had the same idea to bring some Sekirei with him. Vali pointed to the officers. Those aren't ordinary military officers. They're hired soldiers that answer to Higa. It seems that he's desperate to get a few Sekirei on his team, since most of the ones he had from the other Ashikabi are in the safe areas, and the ones who aren't under his control have escaped to the north and west. My team and I can easily take care of the officers outside, but there's something off about these guys. Issei grew curious. What do you mean? They look like normal humans. Vali sighs. They have the scent and appearance of a human, but for some reason I'm detecting a devil's scent. Issei was shocked. Is it possible that the devil is possessing one of the soldiers? Devils can do that, can't they? Vali rubs the back of his neck with his hand. That depends. If the body that the devil tries to possess is too weak, then the body will be destroyed, so that's why they have to weaken or seal most of their power, so they can easily inhabit another one's body. I remember reading a book on possessions when I was in the Cows Brigade faction. There were 3 ways to possess someone. The first is the way I just told you. The second way is for the individual to send their soul from their body into another. If the soul is stronger than the host soul, then the more powerful one will consume the weaker one and take full control of the body. However, there's a catch when doing it this way. When they become one with a new body, then they are bound by its lifespan. If the new body that the devil possesses is killed or destroyed, then the soul will be sent to the afterlife. After all, life isn't something that's meant to be toyed with. Issei was surprised by this information and remembers how he was near death many times but was still able to get back up and fight once more. But what's the last one? Vali breathes deeply before saying. The last way is for one to send their soul to a sacred gear. If the user's will is too weak, then the soul that's trapped themselves in the sacred gear can take over the user's mind and body, but the original host would have no memory of what happened to them. Issei was even more surprised by that last one and began to think of Rainer when he was in Juggernaut Drive during the Diodora incident. I remember seeing Rainer, so does that mean she tried to possess me, or was that just part of Loki's curse? It felt like she was actually there. He was brought out of her thoughts when Yume shook his shoulder. Issei saw the worried look on her face. Sorry. Just thinking about something from my past. Yume hugged him and rubbed his hair. Don't worry. You don't have to hide anything from us. We're here for you, no matter what. Issei was happy from the warm feeling that he felt in his heart from just being in contact with Yume. Yume could sense his emotions much better than any of the other Sekirei in his flock, so when it comes to emotional situations like this, only 4 were best suited to help him in those moments. Yume, Mia, Kagari, and Kazuhana. Vali saw this and knew that Sekirei were beings of emotions who could read a person's feelings with just a glance. Sometimes it was easy, but others made a better attempt to hide them. Hibiki and Hikari were good when it comes to understanding his emotions from being his first Sekirei and the strength of their bond. So he could understand that some of them are closer to their Ashikabi than others. They ended the hug and Issei looked at Vali. What's the plan? Vali smirked. We'll be splitting up with my group taking out the soldiers, and you and your team will head in and get the last 3 Sekirei out of there. Sounds good. Issei nodded and held out his hand. Good luck. Vali shook his hand. You too. They went their separate ways and got ready to rain destruction. With Ravel and company. Ravel and her team were rushing to the Botanical Gardens. We need to hurry. They kept running to the gardens until Shulin caught something. Her eyes widened. Travel. Drop. Ravel dropped to the ground. Bang. Bang. 2 bullet holes hit the wall that was at her left. Ravel turned to look at the soldier pointing a gun at her. Stay where you are. Don't move. He signaled for his comrades to move in. 20 soldiers moved in and surrounded them. They pointed their guns at them and had lasers aimed at their heads. The leader came out, and what made him odd was that his helmet had a symbol. 666. Rosweiss knew that number well. That's the symbol of Traha, but why is it here? These soldiers are definitely human, so why does this guy have the aura of Traha? The soldiers had their guns pointed to them until the leader stepped forward, ready to shoot. One soldier was shocked. But sir. There he fell due to the leader putting a bullet in his head. Anyone else want to defy my orders? Shulin and Ubaluna were alarmed that this human killed a soldier in cold blood, but never had enough time to think it through. The leader spoke again. Ready. The soldiers aimed their guns. The girls were preparing magic. Aim. They all tensed. Fie. They looked at the commander and saw he wasn't speaking. A metal claw was sticking out of his. The body was tossed aside and revealed a woman in bandages and ash-gray hair that had a wild look. Her left claw was stained with blood and she glared at the soldiers. Leave or die. The soldiers take aim at the girl and she only sighs. Your funeral then. She put her hands to her mouth and shouted. Now. Holy water celebration. Hellfire bird. Ice dragon flight. Dance of blades. The girls saw Tsukiyumi, Kagari, Akitsu, and Yomi come out and strike all of the soldiers with their respective elemental attacks. Tsukiyumi drowned the soldiers in water, Kagari burned the soldiers to ash with a dark flame, Akitsu froze some of them with an ice dragon, and Yomi sliced the soldiers with her wind and scythe. After the soldiers fell, Kagari walked to Kiryu and had her hand extended out to her. Good to see Takami's perverted assistant. The girls looked at Kiryu and then Kagari. Do you know each other? Kagari shook her head. Not exactly, but Takami told me of her outside source and how she's perverted like Matsu. Kiryu laughs a little and then smiles before looking at Kagari's dot. Kagari followed her eyes and pushed her forward by putting her arms under her dot. They're real. Not fake. Kiryu grabbed Kagari's and began to fondle her. She blushed as she felt the fire Sekirei. Wow. They have to be around DD or Issei's cups. So who's your Ashikabi? Kagari blushed as she looked to the side and whispered. Issei Haidu. The girls who didn't know leaned in and asked. Who? Kagari shouted. Issei Haidu. Kiryu smiled as she hugged her. I'm happy you finally have someone who loves you. She leans into her ear. Mind if I join you two sometime? I'm sure we can have some fun. Kagari has a murderous look in her eyes and has a fireball ready to shoot at the succumbs. Try it and you're served as grilled succubus. Kiryu waves off the threat and calms her down. Relax, I'm just teasing, but seriously we need to get to the botanical gardens to help Issei. Roswis was looking at the captain's body and noticed the mark disappeared. I'm afraid we have bigger problems. She walks back to them. The captain was possessed by the power of Traha. In other words, the captain was dead, but his body was being controlled by the person's power like a puppet on strings. I traced the power, and the source is coming from one location. She used magic to bring up an image of Higa Izumi. The Ashikabi of the West. Higa Izumi. Ravel and the others were shocked. But that's impossible. Traha is dead. There's no way the beast is back. And Higa is a human, how could he have the beast's power? Her face changed to one of horror and looked at the Valkyrie. Unless. Roswis nodded. There's the slight chance that he's back. Kagari was worried, along with the other Sekirei. Who? Roswis looked at them. His name is. Botanical Gardens. Vali and his Sekirei were destroyed through the barricade that the soldiers set up. Cars were flipped over. Fire was everywhere but controlled. Bodies of the soldiers littered the ground. But the biggest part of the damage was done to the forest. Hibiki and Hikari fired a dragon made of lightning at the vines and disintegrated them. Issei saw the signal and his group moved in. Vali shouted for him. We'll handle things out here. Hurry up and get the last 3 out of here. Issei nodded back. Understood. Thank you Vali. I owe you, big time. Vali watched his rival and his Sekirei charged into the forest. Just promise me you'll give me a good fight at the games. My rival and my friend. He looked at his team and shouted. Alright, let's get some defenses up and call the others. If Higa wants to start a war, then we'll give him one. Hibiki and Hikari stood at his side and saw the destruction all around them. I just hope this ridiculous fight ends soon. Vali wrapped his arms around their shoulders and hugged them. I believe this will be the last battle of the Sekirei clan. Botanical Garden interior. Issei and his team were running in the forest. Yum could sense 3 individuals further ahead, so they continued to follow Yum. There weren't any traps or guards inside which made them feel lucky. Little did they know, they caught the eyes of a certain sniper Sekirei who wasn't any ordinary sniper. Caitlin's ability as a Sekirei allows her to see the heat signatures of an individual, track them by sound, smell, or sight. She could give the goddess of hunt a run for her money. The bullets she uses can pierce through any kind of armor. Her Naruto allows her to enhance her bullets, so they pierce through elemental attacks like water or wind. The bullets wouldn't deter from their targets. They would push through and hit their target. She saw Ashikabi and his Sekirei enter the forest, and as much as she wanted to tell them about Panacea, she wanted to give them a test. She grabbed her walkie-talkie. Hey Kaiha. We got some guests that I think you're going to love. Kaiha stood next to Panacea and asked. Really? Who? Ashikabi of the North. Issei Haidu. Kaiha almost dropped her walkie-talkie and her smile became one of excitement. Where is he? Caitlin looks through her scope. If you want to fight him then we have a small problem. He has 7 Sekirei with him. 2 weapon users, 3 elemental users, a fist user, and the anomaly Sekirei Pandora. Kaiha was interested in fighting them, but knew that her power was limited to her scissor blades. I'll fight Ashikabi. You keep the other Sekirei away. Caitlin smiled. Understood. I can't use my Naruto, but I'm still a damn good sniper. She loads her gun and gets to higher ground that will let her hide her presence. Good luck Kaiha. Kaiha replied. You too, Caitlin. They were getting ready for the best fight they ever had. Issei and the others were walking deeper into the forest and they must have been getting close to their target since the vines were getting thicker as they headed to the center. Issei knew about the other 2 Sekirei besides Panacea. Kaiha, the scissor Sekirei and Caitlin, the sniper Sekirei. Kacho did her best to provide as much information as she could on the 2, but there weren't any battles that involved either of them, so she couldn't make a strategy to overcome them. Issei reassures her that they'll come up with something. It's strange. According to the reports from Kacho, Caitlin had excellent eyesight, great aim, and never missed her target. She should have seen us by now, so why hasn't she tried to fire at us? Because she knows who we are. Issei was so caught in his thoughts, he didn't notice Kaiha sneaked behind the vines to hide her from their view. She cautiously approached the group and was prepared to launch herself. Almost. Come on. He took another step. Now. She leaped out of her hiding place and raised her scissor blades to slice him. Issei kept walking, and the Sekirei with him were surprised by the sneak attack. They tried to stop her, but they were too far away. Issei's hair covered his eyes, but he had a small smirk. Gotcha. His left fist glowed and a sword appeared. He turned and clashed blades with her. Kaiha was surprised by the sword appearing out of his body, which Issei used to his advantage. He turned and let Kaiha hit the ground and be prepared to fight her. Go on ahead of me. Find Panacea and get her out of here. Be wary of Caitlin. Now go. The Sekirei didn't want to leave Issei, even though they knew he could take care of himself, but Yum turned to the center. Let's go. We need to keep going. Issei is buying us time to go get her, so let's not let his sacrifice be a waste. Yum, Kazuhana, Ichiya, Toyotama dashed ahead. Yahin, Pandora, and Areha hesitated, but seeing Issei stand his ground and his reassuring smile was enough for them to keep going. Caitlin watched and was amazed by the trust and bond the Sekirei shared with their Ashikabi. She already had an Ashikabi and their bond was strong. She took a picture out of her and looked at her master. I'll follow any order you give me, Takami Sahashi. She edited the picture and went back to her scope to keep an eye on them. Issei and Kaiha continued to clash and he was having a lot of fun fighting Kaiha. She kept him on his feet and used her blades curved to her advantage. Issei made sure to be wary of the blades and had to put some space between them. As the 2 entered a lock, Issei kicked her in the stomach away from him. Kaiha was sent flying back but used her blades to slow herself down. It gave Issei enough time to prepare a small ball of hell blaze and fired it at her. Kaiha dodged the flame but was then met with a kick from Issei directed to her head. He then grabbed her and tossed the Sekirei over his shoulder. She was sent flying and hit the vines hard. She tried to get up but her blades were caught in the vines. She struggled but there were too many around her blades and Issei approached her. He pointed Ascalon at her neck. Surrender. Kaiha had no other choice but to concede defeat. I yield but I would like to join you. Issei figured this would happen. You're reacting to me, aren't you? Kaiha nodded and puckered her. Issei sighs with a smirk as he sees the girl and then gives her a small dot. Her wings were light red and she enjoyed them until he pulled away. Issei then used Ascalon to cut her free and she was relieved to be free from her binds. Alright, welcome to the team, but first we should check on the others and see how they're doing. Lead the way. Kaiha nodded and walked down the path she came to intercept Issei and his team. They walked for a few more minutes and then saw a sight that took his breath away. There was a large tree in the middle of the room. The leaves were rainbow colored and the moonlight seemed to give it an even more wonderful look. He then saw Yum and the others head to him with Caitlin in tow. The girls hugged him and were happy he was alright. Issei explained that Kaiha was a part of the team now and the girls like Kazuhana, Toyotama and Ichiya welcomed her to the team while Yum, Yahin, Pandora and Areha were curious about the girl and kept an eye on her. Issei was still amazed by the tree. So where's Panacea? Caitlin led Issei to the tree and it opened up as he neared it as if Panacea was welcoming him to her makeshift home. The others wanted to go with him but Kaiha stopped them. Trust me. I know you want to stand with him but Panacea wants to talk to him alone. She's a fusion of the Sekirei of Life Kusano and the Sekirei of Death Shiina. But when the two were fused, their minds, bodies, souls, basically their entire existence became one and created a girl that has the ability to control life and death. She knew you all entered the moment you stepped in the forest. She gestures to the vines. The vines are her way to see, feel, and hear people enter her home. But she is still sleeping because her power is unbalanced. It can only be balanced when Ashikabi passes her test. So have faith in Issei. I believe he will pass. The girls could do nothing but wait and hope Issei returned to them. Inside the tree. Issei went further inside the tree and saw a coffin filled with grass, flowers, and in the center was a girl around his age with long blonde hair that had streaks of gray. Her body was mature, but it held a one-of-a-kind beauty to it. He approached her and a chair made of vines appeared before him. He sat down and another vine came between them and connected his mind to hers. His mind went blank and was shocked as he saw the opposite in the girl's mind. It was absolute chaos. The forest was burned to the ground. Ash and embers flew in the air. The flowers and trees suffered from the fire. Animals and people were dead and littered the ground. The sky was gray and dark. Not a single shred of light entered the forest. Issei then turned when he heard crying further ahead and ran to the voice. As he ran, the crying got louder and louder until he reached its source. He saw a boy with gray hair and a feminine's figure that definitely reminded him of Gasper, cradling a little girl with blonde hair, and her eyes were puffy with tears. But the little girl wasn't moving. The boy was crying because the girl wasn't moving. Issei realized that the girl was dead. The three of them were surrounded by so much death and destruction that it seemed as if there was no hope for the world. Issei remembered how the children of the underworld and the people in Lilith reacted when they were being attacked by Chaos Brigade. He was still getting used to his new powers and body, but he still heard all of the screams of pain and death. They believed there was no hope and that they would all die. But he came out and fought back against the army and managed to protect multiple families from dying that day. He then saw the two and hugged them both. Listen. I know it may seem like the world is a cruel place and that there's no way you can stand on your own 2 feet. But that's a lie. I have seen so much death, destruction, sorrow, and bloodshed. I was disgusted with myself that I couldn't save all of those lives that died, but I knew deep down I couldn't save everyone. No matter how hard one tries to save everyone, there are a few who will die. I know how it feels when you're dead inside, you feel like all hope is lost, you get so depressed you feel like you lost the will to fight. He then went to the half-dead tree and saw a single seed on top of it. He brought it to Shiina and showed it to him. A forest may die in a fire, but the seeds will grow stronger than before. Shiina looked at the seed and moved his hand to touch it but stopped himself. But I only kill all I touch, I need Kusano to help me. I don't deserve to have an Ashikabi or even love. I'll just kill them because of my power. Issei saw how sad the boy was and remembered how he and Gasper went under the same path. Gasper was scared of his power and hid himself in a box, while Issei lost all hope and believed he didn't deserve to be loved. But they both had people to help them get back on their feet and fight for the ones they cared for. Issei hugged Shiina and that surprised the boy. He struggled to get away from Issei. Wait. Stop. I'll kill you with my power. Issei just said. Then why am I still alive and talking to you now? Shiina gasped as he saw that Issei was alright and he let go of the little Sekirei. Shiina. It's alright to be scared of your power, but if you live in fear of it, then you'll only hurt those around you. Kusano still loves and cares for you. And even though you're a fusion, you both deserve to be happy and find your own Ashikabi. He got up and walked to the tree and then turned around. When I was lost and almost overwhelmed by my own depression and sadness, Mia and the others saved me and helped me remember I still have people who will be there for me. My time was stopped temporarily, and that's what happened to you too. So let me help you start your time. Let's restart from square one. No. He then shook his head. He spread his arms apart. Let's restart 0. Light began to break through the clouds. Shiina was shocked by the one who stood before him. He's someone who has faced death's door multiple times, and yet he's still able to smile. Even after being heartbroken and betrayed, he's still able to get back up and live his life. He saw Kusano, and she began to open her eyes. The little green eyes opened and she smiled at Shiina. The two hugged each other, and the area began to change. Flowers, grass, and trees began to sprout from the ground, and the sky began to turn blue. The clouds were blown away and the sun shone in the sky. The two looked at the area and then saw Issei with a hand extended to them with light shining behind him, as if he came to save them. He still smiled and asked. Do you want me to wing you? The two laughed at the question and began to glow into gold particles. Kusano hugged Issei. Shiina shook the hand that was extended and then gave Issei a hug. Issei laughed to himself as the two still hugged him. Thank you for helping us. We were worried about Panacea, but now we know she will be in good hands. Please care for her. Love her. Help her learn what it means to be a part of a family. They were almost gone until they said in unison. "Thank you, Issei. Our Ashikabi." They became a storm of golden particles and they flew into the air. They burst in the air, and the same girl he saw outside descended to him with wings that were gold. They were so bright but didn't blind the dragon from the woman in front of him. She approached him. "I'm not good with situations like this, so can we see where this goes? I want to learn more about you. So please teach me all that you know." Issei cupped her cheeks and leaned in. "I promise to take care of you, my lovely flower." He leaned in and edged her softly. Panacea's eyes widened, and internally she was happy that she now felt complete. Her Ashikabi loved her but would help her learn how to grow in the world. She would become beautiful and bloom. Just like a flower. They separated from each other, and the winds blew around them carrying petals in the air. Panacea remembered something from a book on marriage she read once. Through better or worse. In sickness and health. Master Issei. By the blessing of Gaia, I heal Ashikabi's pain in both body and spirit. I, Panacea, Sekirei 112, make this vow to the one I love and will offer my body, mind, and soul to you. Master Issei. Issei smiles a warm smile and sees her again. "I promise. I will make you happy and help you grow into an amazing woman." They stayed there hugging each other. Outside the tree. The girls were surprised by the vines glowing different colors and the winds picking up. The flower petals blew around everyone. Kazuhana wondered what was going on until Yum responded. "It's Issei. I feel it. Within my heart, the new bond born between them." He did it. He passed the test. The tree opened and Issei came out with Panacea in his arms like a groom would carry a bride. The girls were a bit jealous of the position, but waved it off as they walked to Issei and got to know the girl in his arms. Panacea felt the emotions inside of them and knew they were a bit jealous of her position, but they still have such happiness and love that they wanted to share with her. Panacea closes her eyes with a happy smile. "This is truly the happiest day of my life. Thank you, Issei Haidu. My Ashikabi. The green has been saved." Vali and his Sekirei were taking out the enemy soldiers while maintaining an excellent defense with the pillars and vines. They managed to defeat the last of them with ease. Kacho told them there were no enemies approaching them so they could take a breather. Vali sat on the stone he was next to with Matsu and Himeko. The others were still keeping watch just in case they were ambushed. He was enjoying the comfort of his Sekirei until his phone began to ring. "Hello? Vali? It's me, Issei. Great news, we got Panacea and Kaiha. They're outside, but we also met the sniper Sekirei, and here's some interesting news. Apparently, Ravel, Roswis, Ika Kiryu, and a few others are here in Shinto Tito." Vali was surprised by this development. "Why are they here?" "Don't know, but Kagari just called me and informed me of the situation. Listen to me, we have some bad news." "What is it?" "These Bakits you're way out of now." Vali couldn't hear the whole message. "Issei. Issei. Repeat the message." There was only static on the other end. Vali tried to call the inn, but all he got was static. Hibiki and Hikari came to him. "There's some interference on the other side of the channel. Someone wants to make sure we can't call for backup. We're on our own for now." Vali grunted. "I just hope he gets here soon." A power washes over the area and Vali sensed it and gasped. "Wait. This power I haven't felt in a long time, but there's no way he's still alive." A figure stepped onto the battlefield. It was Higa Izumi, and he looked different as he passed the dead soldiers and the destroyed tanks. The Sekirei prepared for battle, and Vali prepared himself as well for combat. "Who are you? Answer me." The man stopped in his tracks and looked at Vali. He held his head down and began to laugh deeply. "Ha ha 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 ha. Ha 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 ha. It's been a while since my sweet grandson. Oh how I have missed you." Vali was frightened as he heard a voice that was very familiar with him. "It can't be. You should have died in the battle against Trahixa." Higa's body began to break apart as his body was ripped from the inside, and a pair of hands pulled the opening apart to reveal an all too familiar face. It was a middle-aged man in his 40s with dark silver hair and hazel eyes. He looked much like Vali, albeit with longer hair and a beard. However, he possessed a bottomless and creepy aura around his body. He wore the same Mau Lucifer attire as Surzich's, although colored in silver. As he finally emerged, his back revealed he had multiple pairs of devil wings, totaling 12 wings. Vali's breath wasn't taken away as he saw the man who made his life a living hell stand before him now. "I don't understand. How are you still alive?" The newly born Rizavam laughed at his grandson. "Did you really think I wouldn't have a backup plan to save myself? Before you and Issei killed Trahixa, my soul was still alive within that abomination. I used a forbidden spell on myself to send my soul to another inhabitable body. I only managed to steal a piece of Trahixa's power, but that was all I needed to begin my revenge." He looked at the deceased body of Higa. "After I entered my new body, the man Higa Izumi, I began my revenge plan by slowly taking over his mind. After I successfully corrupted the fool's mind, I felt some power I'd never sensed before entering Shinto Tito. I was shocked when I learned my grandson and his friend Issei were in this riveting game of a new species that would truly be worth experimenting on. The Sekirei were disgusted at the thought of being human lab rats and used it as a weapon. They were grateful to have met Vali and be with him no matter what. Vali was shocked as his grandfather explained how he survived, and personally he wanted to finally put an end to his pathetic existence. So what was the plan here, old man? Use your little soldiers as pawns to get to the Sekirei of life and death. Rizavum laughed at him. You are correct. The plan was to take out those pathetic Sekirei who were guarding the fusion Sekirei. After gaining the Sekirei, I was going to extract her DNA and insert it into myself so I could use her powers to resurrect my fallen soldiers and then kill that idiot in the cape who's in charge of MBI. After taking the data from the Sekirei and their ship, I would have had a powerful weapon at my disposal and complete control over all of the Sekirei, but like always you and your friend continued to stand in my way. I knew I had to separate the two of you so you wouldn't be able to take on the real threat. I was able to extract the power of Traha from my body and transfer it into another individual who was so obsessed with power that he would even kill his own family. And the man who is possessing Traha's power is none other than Manaka Sahashi. Rizavum looked at the watch on his arm and nodded. The beast should be awakening right about now. The loud roar came from the center of Shinto Tito. Vali turned and saw the beast begin to emerge. Issei. I hope you're seeing this. It's all on you. You have to kill that thing. He glares at his old man and summons his balance breaker. This is the last time we'll fight an old man. Prepare yourself. Rizavum uses the little magic he has and prepares himself for the last fight of his life. Come and show me just how strong you've become, Vali Lucifer. The White Dragon Emperor charged in and his Sekirei followed him to battle. With Issei. Earlier at the forest. Issei and his team were leaving the forest until an old friend appeared before him. Issei saw someone he hadn't seen in a long time. Ravel. Roswis. Ikaregun, what are you guys doing here? Ravel hugged Issei and led him on. It's good to see you again, Issei. As for your question, Roswis came and wanted to know where you were. She's aware of the situation back home and trusts me when I say I was just as shocked as you when I heard what happened. Anyway, we met up with Ika and he told us that she's been working with Takami Sahashi and filling her in on the whereabouts of the Sekirei. When we heard what happened at the Botanical Gardens, we rushed over to help you, but it seems you have everything under control. Panacea hugged Issei's back and was worried about the people in front of her. Issei noticed this and relaxed her tension by sending some of his aura into her. She felt warm and relaxed by the aura. She was about to thank him until she felt a dark presence enter the area. Issei. There's a dark aura here. The Luu, Issei Haidu. Issei turned to see Manaka Sahashi in his normal attire. The man was excited to see him, but as Issei looked at the strange man there was an extremely dark aura inside of him. Drake. Do you sense it? I do. Best we find out what he wants, but keep your guard up. He nodded in response and asked Manaka. Why are you here? If I recall correctly, the game is still on. Manaka lost his grin and Issei knew something was up. Well, I wanted to personally congratulate you in winning the life and death Sekirei Panacea. Truly you are an intriguing Ashikabi. Issei and the others are wary as Takami may have a cool appearance, but for those who knew her personally, they could see the beads of sweat drip from her forehead. Kagari, Caitlin, and Ika saw her tapping her right leg with her index finger, and they got the message. Manaka has his hand out and offers a proposal. I want you to come join MBI. If you do so, I will give you all rights of MBI and all of the research and experiments that we are currently in the process of accomplishing. What do you say, Issei Haidu? Interested? Issei closed his eyes and had a smile on his face as he extended his hand. After hearing an offer like that, how could I say no? He grabbed the hand and shook it. Issei opened his eyes and summoned Ascalon and sliced off his arm. Manaka yelled as he grabbed the stump that was bleeding like no one's business. Kagari shot a blast of hellfire at the fool and burned him, while Caitlin shot the man in the head. Ika pulled Takami away from his reach. Manaka groaned as he felt so much pain and then collapsed on the ground. Dead as a doornail. Issei sighs as he looks at the dead man who wanted to make a deal with him. Honestly, that was like making a deal with the devil itself. I would never stoop so low as to make a deal with someone like you. He looks at his team and begins to walk to them until he hears movement. Manaka's body began to squirm as tentacles began to appear from his body. His head extended into the air as it began to morph into an abomination of darkness. The new head roared as its body continued to come out of Manaka's body. The creature came out of its shell and roared as it prepared to fight Issei and his team. Issei and his Sekirei got ready for the fight of Shinto Tito. As much as I hate to do this. He opened his phone and typed in a number. I have no choice. It ran until someone picked up. Hacho. Initiate operation. crimson wings. Acho was shocked by the order until she became serious. Understood, master. She typed in a few commands and hit the big red button that appeared on the screen. Let's do this. The button sent a signal to all of Issei's Sekirei around Shinto Tito. The message was played for them as they rushed to their Ashikabi side. Some of them were able to leap off the buildings to their master, but for some they entered a portal that appeared before them. It allowed them to quickly get to their master's side. Issei looked at the girls and then Ravel's team. Ravel. You and the others need to stand back. Don't want you two to get hit by the blast. The tone that he used was not his normal kind tone, but a serious tone that spoke with authority. It wasn't a request. It was an order. Ravel wanted to fight by Issei's side, but she saw the look in his eyes and his Sekirei appearing by his side. She looked at the ground and growled as she clenched her fists. Understood. But no, you're going to pay me back later, alright? Issei heard this and decided to promise her something she wanted from him for a long time. He walked over to her and lifted her by the chin, so her eyes met with his own. He leaned in and edged her. Ravel gasped as she was taken by surprise and liked what she received from him. She always had many fantasies, but now this was much better than anything she imagined. Issei loves the soft pillowy feeling from her, and his instincts came into play, and he decided to play with her tongue. Ravel moaned as Issei wrestled her tongue with his own. Sadly, they had to separate because Ravel needed air and she was blushing red as a tomato. Issei gave her a peck on the nose and Shulin caught her as she fainted in her arms. Panacea and Kaiha stood at Issei's side and tapped his shoulders. Issei looked at them until he felt his pieces react to his two newest additions to his flock. The knight went inside of Kaiha, while the remaining 8 pawns went inside of Panacea. The two of them were glowing their respective colors, and their features became more draconic. Mia and the others appeared before Issei and saw the threat. Each of them readied themselves as they faced the remaining power of Traha. Issei looked at his queens Mia and Yum. They looked at him and nodded in agreement. We're with you until the end. All of us. Issei had a thankful look on his face and focused on his target. Kacho. Are you ready? She nodded and walked to Issei. They end and her wings burst forth in a bright white light. Kacho felt her power grow much stronger than before. By the wisdom and knowledge of this world, grant my Ashikabi the intelligence he requires to repel his foes. She looked at the beast and shouted. Initiate link. The Sekirei around Issei began to feel connected with each other as they were ready for what's next. Get ready because after this we won't be able to move for a while. Now, Issei. Issei smirked as he punched the ground with Drag. Do it, Drag. The dragon smiles with a toothy grin. I'm all for it, partner. Let's show that thing who we are. Transfer. The Sekirei began to feel a new power enter into them. Each of them glowed the same color as their wings. Issei was glowing in a bright red light. Ravel and the others were shocked by the power displayed before them until Roswis went in front of them and put up a powerful barrier. Issei shouted to the others. Let's show Traha the power of the Crimson King of the Winds and Wings. Some cheered in agreement with their Ashikabi, while the others were excited to use their full power. Mia started them off. Now fly Crimson Light Slash. A bright flash of light emitted from her sword and she swung it like a sword. Boom. Crimson Fists of Destruction. Images of red fists were sent to the beasts as the punches pummeling it. Karasuba and Kaiha were ready. Fusion move. Mido's and Jitsuha Kaiha's blades and Karasuba's sword was shrouded in darkness and they sliced the air to release a volley of blades at Traha. Yomi and Toyotama were ready for their turn. Fusion move. Piercing Wind Strike. The scythe sent a blast of wind with many spears from Toyotama at Traha. Each of them glowing in crimson energy. The Kitsu, Tsukiyomi, Kagari and Kazuhana combined their respective elements and shouted. Fusion move. Apocalypse Abyss. Tornadoes of ice, water, fire and air appeared and surrounded Traha and closed in on it. Yuzum, Yashima, Benitsubasa and Ichiya readied their special moves they've been working on. Yashima readied her hammer while Yuzum leaped into the air and readied a drill made of cloth. Benitsubasa and Ichiya gathered all of their energy into their fists and shot forward. Gravity Hammer. Spiral Weave. Layered Edge. Crimson Crushing Blast. Earth Shatter. Their respective attacks were sent forward and struck Traha. The pawns readied their final moves and some did a fusion move with the others. Panacea used her power to boost the others with one of her Narutos. The Gift of Gaia. While Pandora was using her luck blessings. Yahin summoned all of the shadows in the area and created a giant shadow dragon. Eat this. Never-ending nightmare. The dragon shot forth and enveloped the beast in darkness. Heihain and Areha readied their blades and fired them at the beast. Fusion move. Dance of Blades. The sharpened chakrams and claws sliced many parts of the beast. The beast roared as Issei prepared to finish Traha off. Farewell and may we never meet again, Traha. He summoned his balance breaker and the orb in the center of his glowed and erupted with power. Now go plus ultra. Long-Ina Smasher. The green beam blasted at Traha, and the beast didn't stand a chance against the powerful attack. The beast roared in pain as the beam enveloped it, and eventually, it disintegrated into nothingness. The attack was finished, and the beast Traha 666 was no more. Issei sighs in relief that they won and almost collapses from exhaustion until Mia catches him and brings his head to her. She rubbed his hair and edged his forehead. "You did well. Rest up." Issei nodded and smiled as he relaxed. He was just hoping that Vali got the message and was alright. But Vali was standing above his grandfather after weakening him thanks to his team. Rizavam groaned as he tried to get up, but he knew he was finished. "Guess this means you win." "Heh. It's ironic that I lost even though I managed to return from death. It's simply hilarious. I know you probably won't believe me when I say this, but have a nice life, Vali." Vali didn't believe him, but still acknowledged it before killing him. Hibiki and Hikari decided to end the pathetic excuse of a devil and electrocuted Rizavam's body to a crisp. Vali decided to burn it to ash, so he breathed his own fire and the flames destroyed the body. He looked at his team and smiled. He raised his fist into the air and roared in victory. The others joined in as well as they celebrated the end of the battle. Vali saw Issei and his team meet up with them, and they greeted each other and asked what happened. Issei explained what happened on his end, and Vali was amazed at his rival that he and his team took on the last piece of Traha's power. The kami came up to them and bowed in thanks. "You have no idea of how grateful I am now that Manaka and that thing is dead. Are any of you interested in joining MBI? I have planned on stepping down and settling down. To be honest, I've neglected my family long enough. I haven't exactly been Mother of the Year, but I think now is a better time to make amends with them." Vali and Issei looked at each other and nodded. Vali stepped up and shook his head. "Sorry, but no thanks. I'm not exactly the ruler kind of guy, but I believe my rival would be a better choice to run MBI. He has been wanting his own base for a while now." The kami looks at Issei and asks, "Care to take the reins?" Issei replied with a grin and shook his hand. "I'd be more than happy to take you up on the offer. I trust we can go ahead and take care of the paperwork right now." The kami nodded and presented the paperwork to him. "Sign here and all of MBI will belong under your name." Issei looked at the contract and asked both his manager and Kacho for their opinion. Ravel and Kacho looked over the documents and nodded in the areas that they were looking at and nodded back to Issei. "It's good. No backlashes." Issei grabbed the pen and signed the documents. He handed it back to Takami and she looked through everything and gave Issei his leader ID. "Here's your ID and there's one place you should check tomorrow when you go check out your new office. But for now let's leave this time since the Sekirei plan is over and the winner is Issei Haidu." Everyone cheered as they were planning a great celebration for the winner and for the plan finally ending. The two dragons headed to Izumo Inn to party like there's no tomorrow. Mia and Issei invited the others, but Takami and Caitlin declined the offer. The two of them decided to have their own personal celebration together. Takami and Caitlin went to their favorite bar and they cheered for the plan being over. Takami watched Caitlin drink her booze and she remembered the first day they met and became a duo. She also remembered what they had and how it made her feel so alive. "Caitlin, I have something I want to ask you." She gets down on one knee and presents a diamond ring to her Sekirei who was blushing as she saw it. Caitlin wanted to believe it was real and not a drunken hallucination until she felt Takami's hand on her hand. Takami blushed as she mentally prepared herself. "Caitlin, I want you to be with me for the rest of my life. Now and forevermore, so will you make me the happiest woman in the world and me marry me?" Caitlin saw this and was shocked until she cried tears of joy. "Why yes. What took you so long to ask me?" Takami put the ring on Caitlin's ring finger and pulled her in and at her. The rest of the people in the bar celebrated for the happy couple. They separated and then ended with their tongues and enjoyed each of their tastes. That night was filled with love and joy. As many Sekirei and their Ashikabi showed their love for each other. The Sekirei plan was over and victory went to the Red and White Dragon Emperors. Time skip. 2 weeks later. It had been a week since Issei had claimed ownership of MBI and he was already in the process of making a couple of changes from how they used to run things. Ravel became his secretary and helper with their greatest dread. Paperwork. He was able to finish his degree in college thanks to the MBI connections and his Sekirei helping him study all of those late nights. He offered Vali a position as an ambassador of sorts, but Vali rejected the offer since he was planning on heading back to the Grigori and continuing his training. Before he left, Issei gave him a few envelopes to give to Azazel and a few other individuals on the list. Vali asked why and Issei responded how he wanted to talk to the others about a few things since there were only 3 months left until the Azazel Cup and he wanted to change a few things about his name that the children and people of the underworld call him. He wanted to show the world that he was no longer the same person as before, that he changed and became someone better. Vali understood his reasoning and promised he would deliver the invites. Speaking of change, Takami and Caitlin got married a few days ago, and she tried to mend her relationship with her children that she had neglected for a long time. When she revealed she was part of the plan, she begged her children to forgive their sinful mother for all the pain she caused them for such a long time. Manaka and his sister looked at their mother and then at Caitlin. He smiled at his mother and brought her in a hug which surprised her. "Mom, despite all that's happened, I could never come to hate you. We're family and we're always there for each other no matter what." He looked at his sister and she was a bit stiff about it, but still she joined in the hug. After that big reveal, Takami told them that Sakura were going to get married in a few days. It was a small one with only family and friends. Takami was the one in the suit, while Caitlin was the one in a wedding dress. Minato was blushing at the thought of his mother and another woman getting married, while Yukari had a nosebleed at the thought. Takami sighs as she knew where Yukari got that side from, and it wasn't her. Issei Sakura wanted time to help out at MBI, so he made sure that they all had jobs that would fit their skills. Karasuba and Yume led 2 teams of 3 to make sure that the Sakura were well taken care of and to help establish the law in the city. Karasuba's team consisted of Benitsubasa and Heihain, while Yume's teammates were Yoshima and Kagari. Ishima wanted to protect Sakura who were unwinged and help them find their destined one. Kagari was self-explanatory, but she was wary to take breaks and not go out at night on patrol when she should be resting. Acho and Matsu were working together in the labs of MBI, and the two worked together very well after they put their rivalry on hold. Minato still attended school, and his Sakura found a few jobs thanks to MBI's sources and were able to raise enough money to buy a house for all of them to live together and spend the rest of their lives. Tsukiyumi, Panacea, and Kazuhana decided to work at the Botanical Gardens and take care of the nature in the area. Akitsu, Yahin, Kaiha, and Yomi became a special group that takes on secret missions and gathers intelligence in the dark corners of the city. Yahin was the leader for her skills as an assassin, Yomi and Kaiha for their intimidating and scary ways of getting people to talk, and Akitsu to cover their tracks and prevent others from escaping. Miya decided to continue working at the inn, and Issei decided to expand it a bit so it was now more of a hotel, but still had the nice warm feeling that an inn had when one enters. A few of the other Sakura decided to work at the newly built inn. Toyotama and Ichiya were working at the inn's new gym as coaches to help the guests and Sakura stay fit and strong. Yuzume, Pandora, and Areha worked as housekeepers for the inn. Strangely, the 3 really enjoyed doing that kind of work. Most of the projects that MBI had been doing that involved turning Sakura into weapons were destroyed, and instead they began projects for medicine, ways to help Sakura reproduce, and to create a way for paperwork to become less of an issue. They were able to help Takami and Caitlin conceive a child, but Caitlin had to be the one carrying the baby since the process would be too painful for Takami. As for the projects that were eliminated, Matsu and Kacho found out that Manaka has been trying to create newer Sakura by fusing Sakura DNA together. Many of the experiments died except one. She was a combination of Kagari's and Akitsu's DNA. Her code name was Issei, but Issei decided to give the girl a different name. She looked like a girl, but her hair and eyes were different. Half of her hair was white as snow, and the other was dark red like fire. Her eyes were different as well. One was blue and the other was red, but they were on the opposite ends. Blue eye on red and red eye on white. When she was released from the tube, she saw Issei and immediately registered him as her father and hugged his leg. Issei was shocked at the idea of being her father, but decided to roll with it at first. Here he named her Undine Haidu. She had the appearance of a 6 to 7-year-old child, but her mind was around a 8-year-old's, which made her a bit smarter and helped her pick things up like walking and reading more quickly than normal kids. Her power was a bit unstable until Matsu and Kacho made a bracelet for her to help the child control her powers and limit her to how much she exerted. Now while they did have jobs, they never slacked off in their training, and the smartest Sakura decided to help them get stronger by putting them in simulators and making new weapons for the others in the flock. After days of tiresome work and struggling, Kacho and Matsu found a way to defeat paperwork and reduce the stress and workload by at least 90%. The system they had went through all of the paperwork and analyzed it to make sure it was actually worth looking into, or it was just junk mail. It took some ingenuity along with some trial and error, but they were able to work out the kinks and make it work. The scientists and workers were overjoyed that it gave them more time to spend with their families and how they would be able to still make good pay at work. Issei was happy with what was going on here in Shinto Tito, but a small part of him wondered about the others at home and how they were doing. I guess we'll see in a few months. Ravel came in and handed Issei some paperwork about a project that he wanted to build, but he would need some help from a few old friends. Go town. Riaz and the girls were having a girls' night since they were done with finals and decided to kick back and relax for tonight before they got back into training. Zenobia and Kaneko were still having a few issues with their boyfriends, but they still wanted to be with Issei. Their brains said to stick with the boyfriends they had, but their hearts ached as they spent more time with them. Irina and her boyfriend were doing okay, but he could tell something had been bothering her since she had less energy than usual. Riaz and Akeno were still together with their boyfriend, but he seemed to have been less interested in them lately, and they didn't know why. Asia continued to have a bright smile on her face, but deep in her soul lied Rainer, who was smirking as the next phase of her plan was about to commence. Riaz lifted her cup and made a toast. For completing our classes and soon we'll be ready to fight in the Azazel Cup. Are you with me? The girls lifted theirs and cheered. Yeah. They drank their sparkling cider they had with them and quickly finished all 3 bottles before they fell asleep. As they lay asleep, Asia's body began to move and her eyes opened to reveal Renaud's. She slowly got up and stretched the kinks out of her body. It's a good thing I used those sleeping pills in their drinks, now they'll be having nice dreams while I have begun phase 2 of my plan. She knew the vampire and knight were staying in their own home, so she had the house to herself. Rainer walked over to the bookcase and pulled one of the books out towards her. The bookcase moved to the side to reveal a secret passage. She walked to the bodies and used a levitation spell to make the bodies follow her, since Asia was cute but no muscle. So pathetic. Rainer brought all of the girls to the lab, and in the lab were 3 containers. One was empty while the other 2 were full of water, and there were 2 spirits floating inside. One was Kalwerner, and the second one was Middled. Rainer used a feather from her friends to bring their souls back, thanks to the equipment the mansion had. Rainer knew that the others were interested in Issei since Kalwerner may look mature, but she was actually a big masochist who wanted a strong man to hold her in his arms. Middled wanted to be spoiled, but still loved an Issei fitter Bill after seeing how he went so far to show the nun a good time before they stole her. She reached the spirit chamber and brought Akeno's body to it. The spirit of Middled was drawn to the girl and decided to take possession of her. She went into the girl's mouth and she moaned a bit until waking up. Her eyes were like Middled and she saw her new assets before playing with them. Oh, that's nice. I finally have a and not a flat board like before. Thanks, Rainer. I take back everything I ever said about you. Rainer and Asia's body nodded in thanks before bringing the newly fallen Irina to the spirit chamber, and Kalwerner went inside of Irina's ass and she moaned as she quivered like she was cold until her eyes opened to reveal the possession was a success. Kalwerner opened her new wings and was amazed that the new body she inhabited was now a fallen angel. Rainer saw them and smirked. Isn't this ironic? 3 dead fallen angels now possessing the bodies of a fallen and disgraced nun, a former human angel then fallen, and lastly Barkwheel's daughter. Now we need 2 bodies to complete the resurrection, but why not share the potential these girls have? Middled was confused and she scratched her new head. What do you mean? Kalwerner thought of what Rainer said until she figured it out. There's a device that will allow us to extract their DNA and fuse it with ours, correct? Rainer nodded. She walked over and brought a small device that had multiple hoses attached to it. This device can extract the blood from any individual and can convert it to another's DNA. For example, if I wanted the Grimory's power, all I have to do is this. She sticks one of the hoses with the needle end into Ria's arm and her blood begins to be sucked into the machine. The machine took the blood and sucked some of Renaud's blood and combined the DNA before it was sent back into her body. After the process was finished, Rainer felt her power surge within her. She lifted her hand and revealed an orb of the power of destruction. The others were shocked before smiling. Rainer grabbed the other hoses and connected them to the other girls before activating the machine. Akeno's and Irina's bodies moaned as their blood was extracted and combined with Kaneko and Zenovia's blood before it went into her bloodstream and entered Rainer's body. They repeated the process with Kalwerner's and Middled new bodies, and the girls were a bit drained, but thanks to their newly acquired powers they could still stand. Rainer then took Ria's body and dragged it to the circle in the center. You 2 decide on whose body you want to take, but I'm marking the Grimory girl, so when the time's right the ritual can begin. Kalwerner wanted to have the Devil Knight and Middled wanted the Catgirl Kaneko, so they took the bodies to the circle and marked them with magic enchantments. Rainer looked at Ria's face as she was marked by the spell, and only Rainer could see it. She looked at the sleeping face and rubbed Ria's cheek before slapping it. Pathetic. You had such a good man and decided to throw it all away for a lowly commoner. A monkey that has a pig filthy greed. Enjoy the last few months because when we lose against Issei, your body and spirit are mine. She edged the sleeping girl's head and smirked cruelly at her. Good night, Riaz. Sleep tight and don't let the bedbugs bite. Issei was finishing the last of his work for the day and he couldn't help but think about the plans for tonight. He wanted everything to go perfect because the guests coming tonight at the Haidu Inn were old friends of his and they were very powerful people in their own rights. Ravel came in and saw Issei was finishing the last of his work but was also shaking a bit out of nervousness. She knew how important that tonight was, but she knew he would collapse from exhaustion if he didn't relax. She inwardly giggled at herself as she remembered that she was like that as well, until Issei taught him to relax. She notices Issei hasn't caught her in his sight yet, probably because he wasn't paying attention at the moment and wanted to complete his work so he could prepare for the night. She had a sneaky grin as she went around him and hugged his head into her dot. Issei blushed and turned to see Ravel. Oh. Hey Ravel, what's up? How long have you been here? She smiled as he asked her. I've been here for a few minutes and I saw you were so busy that I decided to surprise you. But in all seriousness, are you worried for tonight? Issei sighed before nodding. I'm just worried about the reactions when they hear. You have to remember many of them have a special relationship with them. How will they take the news when they realize their family basically betrayed me for some other amateur wannabe sacred gear users? Surziches and his family love Riaz, and granted we have a good bond, there's still the issue that he'll take her side. Then we have Akeno with her father Barakwil and Azazel. Kaneko and Kuroka. Irina's parents and Mrs. Korda. And Lord Michael and Lady Gabriel. We may have the advantage with your family and the other 3 Mayus, but there is Anne. Slap. Issei had a handprint on the right side of his face and looked at Ravel, who had a glove in her hand before hugging him again. Listen to me. You may not know this, but you have a lot of political power from many of the factions, and not just the biblical. You also have the trust and faith of many of them who saw what you did on the battlefield. There have been many times when they were ready to give up and call it quits, or they didn't have hope. Do you remember when you believed you were gone and the underworld was attacked? The people of the underworld and many of the peerages were being overwhelmed by the monsters, and many of them lost hope. But in that moment when we were all about to surrender and give in to fear, we were blessed with a hero who came and saved us. She let him go and went to the window and gazed outside at Shinto Tito before looking back at Issei. That hero was you, Issei. You came and were the one who repelled the forces of Chaos Brigade. You came back and brought our light and hope back to the Alliance. Without you, all of us wouldn't be here today, so even if the world turns its back on you or them, know I'll stand by your side. No matter what. Issei was shocked until he laughed at himself. He got up and then hugged her with so much strength. Thank you, Ravel. I don't know what I would do without you. He had her and finished the last of his work before he put his pen down. Alright, now that work is done. Let's go home and get ready. The two walked to the elevator and hit the garage button. As the door closed, Issei was stretching his arms to relax himself. Tonight, we have many important people coming, so let's make sure they feel welcome. Ravel nodded with him. Agreed. It'll be a night they won't forget. The two headed to the garage and got in the car before informing the inn they were on their way. Haidu Inn. Mia and many of the other Sakurai were putting the finishing touches on the table and prepared a feast before they heard the door opening to reveal Issei, Ravel, and Kacho. They waved hello, and everyone welcomed them back as they were finishing the dishes for the course. It's good to see you, Issei. We're almost ready and it's best that you take a bath so you can feel relaxed. Issei nodded and ed Mia before heading to the baths and got ready, while Ravel decided to help finish the meal before getting ready as well. Issei came out in a formal suit with Undine behind him, and the young man smiled as he looked at his daughter with a smile of joy on his face. He had broken the news about the girl's birth to her, and the young dragon was surprised by what she said afterwards. Daddy is daddy. You took care of me and gave me a home. A warm place to sleep and food in my belly. You helped me use my power and taught me so many things. It doesn't matter that I wasn't born like most children, I'm still alive and I'm a Haidu. So I'm already part of the family. Issei was so surprised by his little girl that he gave her a big hug and played with her for the rest of the day. Since then the two enjoyed playing with each other, and the two have truly bonded very well. Like a real father and daughter. Undine was basically a little angel, but a little mischievous in her own way. She always enjoyed pulling small pranks on others, and once she got her laugh and she helped clean up her messes. Kagari and Akitsu were happy that Undine called them different motherly names, so the two could tell who she was calling. Undine is called Kagari Mama and Akitsu Mommy. It actually made the fire and ice duo very happy. Kagari accepted the title of being her mama, and Akitsu had a big smile whenever Undine called her mommy. Issei was happy for the two for getting along with his little girl before the door opened and an old friend appeared. Vali was in front of the door with the raider duo and his team of Kuroka, Biku, Arthur and LaFay Pendragon. Azazel and Barkwheel were behind the two and came inside. Azazel saw Issei standing next to a beautiful purple-haired woman in a purple kimono, which somehow enhanced her natural beauty. The playboy gave him a thumbs up before Barkwheel smacked him on the back of his head. Issei laughed before playing host. Welcome to the Haidu Inn. Come in and take off your coats and hats, we'll take care of them for you. It was chilly out that night, so coming into a warm inn really made everyone's day. Andor and Panacea came and took the coats off of them before they put them away on the coat rack. Azazel and the other guests were surprised by the feast before them, and a few of them were very impressed by the display. So impressed that Azazel tried to grab a chicken leg, but something flew in the air. Whoosh. Bam. Ow. A ladle flew from Azazel's head to Mia's hand, and she had a small smile on her face with her eyes closed, but a giant dragon was glaring behind her. It was so terrifying that Azazel might have tinkled himself a bit. That's scary. Issei smiles at his queen and wife before calming her down and helping her to the table. Vali stifled a laugh before the door was opened by Kagari, who welcomed the next guests. It was Serzich's Lucifer, his wife Graphia still in her maid uniform, Milika's Gremory, and Lord and Lady Gremory. They came in and after them were a few more individuals. A young man appearing to be in his mid-20s, with light blue eyes and green hair that was slicked back. He had a mysterious aura around him denoting power and secrecy. He was Ajuka Beelzebub, current Beelzebub and head of the Department of Technology of the Underworld. Next was a beautiful girl appearing to be in her late teens with black hair that flowed down her back and blue eyes. She also had a childlike body, albeit large. She wore a green business suit, but it did not hide her figure. Her personality was childlike, but it was really nice having her around. Her name was Seraphil, current Leviathan and head of foreign affairs. Not long after another magic circle made its appearance, this time in the inn. An uncomfortable energy for the devils spread around the entirety of the inn. The circle was white in color, it was reminiscent of an angel's wings, and was glowing in yellow light and giving off magic particles of the same color. Its shape was similar to the ones of the fallen, but it had many angelic symbols spinning in the outermost layer of the circle. The meaning of those symbols kept changing. From love to hope, and from hope to strength. The language was Enochian, a language written in the diary of John Dee used for magical practice. From the light the circle gave off, two figures made their appearance. A man and a woman, both of them wearing pure white clothes. The man was wearing pauldrons on his shoulders in a bright gold color and a red contrast. He had a golden halo, and 12 golden wings sprouted from his back, stating his rank as a seraph. He had the appearance of a handsome-looking man with long blonde hair and green eyes. His name was Michael, the leader of the 4 great seraphs, and a throne of heaven. It's good to see you again, Issei. With a kind smile, Michael spoke to the rest of the people inside the room. He then hid his wings and walked close to the table, where 2 chairs were specifically left for both of them. He walked closer and sat on it, then turned around and talked to the woman that was here with him. Gabriel, please stop looking around and sit. We don't know when someone might arrive. Michael spoke to the now named Gabriel, who blushed because of shame at the words of her brother. Yes, Michael Nai-sama. She smiled and walked closer to his side. Unknowingly all the men were looking at her. Not for nothing was she titled, the most beautiful woman of heaven. She had a beauty that could topple down empires, and just for a single smile from her, a war could be ignited. She had curly blonde hair and a voluptuous figure above that of Penemu and Seraphil. Her beauty, as well, was on another level completely. She even wore a long white dress that hugged her figure and reached her ankles. Some golden hints could be seen in the dress if one looked closely enough. Issei welcomes them and has them come in and sit down at the table, ready to partake in the feast. He knew a few more people were coming, so he had to make sure there were plenty of seats and they had enough space. A magic circle materialized inside the inn once again, but this time it looked different. The former circles were horizontally against the ground, but this one was vertically opposed to it. Many Norse runes accompanied the circle and were all over it, shining and spinning. However, at one moment, the runes stopped moving, and the magic circle opened just like a double door. An old man came from within it. He looked like he was in between his 80s and death. He wore a gold and blue monocle on his left eye without the addition of the chain, completely covering the entire eye. He had long gray hair and a matching beard. And wore a robe which was short and had a blue and gold lining on the top and bottom of the collar, the sleeves and at the front of his robes, all the way down to the bottom of it. The rest of his robe was white, with matching shoes. He also had a golden and black hat that was similar to a crown. He looked at Issei before laughing and walking over to him. It's good to see you again, my boy. How are you? Issei nods and shakes the old man's hand. I'm doing well, thank you, and don't worry about Roswis, I've made sure she didn't cause an accident. A yell erupted from the kitchen. It was one time. Let it go already. A laugh erupted after the yell. Come on, Mrs. Valkyrie. No need to be embarrassed. Especially after what you did to your pillow when you were. Verasuba left the kitchen as she swallowed what was shoved in her mouth, and Roswis had a deep blush on her face, but didn't say a word before going to the table and sat next to one of the others. Odin laughed as he saw this and sat next to Roswis, but before he sat down, Issei grabbed his arm and gave him a warning. Remember, the girls in my peerage are my mates. So please control yourself, alright? Odin felt fear as he looked at the dragon before Issei went to greet the next group as another circle appeared. No, not a circle. more like a crack appeared on an empty space at the side of the inn, emitting immense heat similar to that of the sun. The crack increased in size and was further expanding. It was completely red in color and shined with an orange-yellow light. Heat irradiated from the center part of it, making everyone sweat. Soon, 3 figures made their appearance, 2 of them well known, while the last not as much. They were 3 women, beautiful in the whole sense of the word. Among them, there was a black-haired beauty with 2 tails and an air of elegance surrounding her. She wore a black and gold kimono that parted down her legs, showing the beauty of her white skin. Her hair was flowing freely down her back and covering part of her shoulders. The kimono she wore was open and showed a glimpse of her beauty, just enough so that it didn't seem vulgar. She was Kuroka, the new ambassador of the Imkai. "Naya. We're here." It seemed that her playful attitude still remained, but it appeared to be more controlled. She quickly stepped out of the crack and walked to the table, right towards 3 chairs that were at the side of the fallen angels. She walked and sat down on the left chair, all eyes still on her. "Kuroka. Please wait for a second. We should at least greet Issei for inviting us to his home." The second figure inside the crack walked out of it. She was an extremely beautiful woman with a voluptuous figure and very long blonde hair with matching eyes. She had very delicate facial features, and her eyebrows were cut very short and round. Her hair was tied in a loose ponytail, reaching all the way down to her legs that end in a spiral with taut bandages to keep it in place. She also wore a shrine maiden outfit, but this one was golden in color, revealing to the luck of all men present, a great part of her assets. She was Yusaka, the current leader of the Imkai and a Kitsune no Kami or Divine Kyuubi. "Yusaka. Let Kuroka be like this. Always being tense makes my shoulders sore and makes you look older." The third woman spoke with a relaxed tone of voice. She appeared to be quite carefree. She was a woman in her late 20s, with bright red hair similar to flames. She wore her hair in a wavy side ponytail with side bangs that came down her right shoulder. Because of the size of her bust, it appeared to rest only halfway down her right breast. She looked extremely beautiful, and her golden eyes seemed to shine like flames. Her clothing was a traditional Japanese kimono that, similar to Kuroka's, was open right at her legs, letting her flawless white skin be seen. The color of the kimono was gold, and designs in the shape of small suns could be seen all over it. Her obi was mainly red with a hint of black, creating a contrast that accentuated her slim waist. A small, hand-sized mirror floated behind her. It was pitch black in color, and around its circumference, it had different blue jewels. The woman was the second god to arrive. Her-in-chief of Japanese mythology, Amaterasu. Goddess of the sun and an extremely powerful woman, being among the top 20 of the world ranking. The mirror behind her was the Yata no Kagami, capable of reflecting any kind of attack. A treasure of Japanese mythology that specializes in defense. "Yes, Yusaka-chan. Just like A-chan said, you need to relax." Naya, the comment of Kuroka and the giggles of Amaterasu, made her pop a vein in anger. Before she snapped, Amaterasu stepped in. "Nin, Yusaka. We have more important things to do, so please relax." While moving her hands, Amaterasu tried to calm Yusaka. "Amaterasu-sama. You're too relaxed, exactly like Kuroka. Please take these matters more seriously." Yusaka tried to scold Amaterasu, but she just smiled and tilted her head. Getting another tired sigh from the Imkai. Giving up, Yusaka walked close to the table and sat at the right chair, leaving the center one for the sun goddess. The 3 sat down and talked among themselves, but soon enough Amaterasu spoke to Issei. "We do thank you for inviting us, but we are a bit curious as to why, not to be rude or anything." Issei waved it off. "I completely understand. It's not every day that the White Dragon Emperor comes to your home and gives you an invitation for a special dinner hosted by my peerage and myself. But still, it's a pleasure to hear you could come all that way, but I'm surprised that little Kunu isn't here with her mother." "Pia." Issei turns around to catch a little girl by her leg, and she giggles as Issei looked at the young fox Yaokai, who was like a young child version of her mother. It was Kunu, heiress of the Yaokai faction and Lady Isaka's daughter. Issei put her down before hugging her and Kunu hugging back. "It's good to see you again, Issei." Issei at her forehead. "It's good to see you as well, Kunu. You are making sure Kuroka stays out of trouble." She did a cute tiny salute as she spoke. "Yes. Kuroka hasn't caused any trouble lately for my mother, but there's a lot of weird noises coming from her room sometimes at night, and not the good kind." Issei and Yusaka looked at the cat-like woman who was blushing, while some of the men were laughing at her expense, until Issei looked at his watch. They should be here soon. They always enjoy a flashy entrance. Minutes flew by. Some talked amongst each other while others stayed silent. But soon the sound of the rumbling of thunder was heard. The atmosphere felt electric and the air heavy. The muffling of thunder was heard closer and more loudly, and in the middle of the room a lightning bolt struck the ground. Sizzle sizzle. After the brief splendor, 2 men could be seen. The first man had blood-red clothes similar to a toga. On top of it, he had a white mantle with gold embroidery, and many different Greek letters were also on it. He wore a golden crown on his head, and many white jewels accompanied it, as well as brown sandals that reached halfway through his calf. He looked like a handsome man with long blonde hair with a goatee and bronze eyes. The emotions of his eyes were excitement and a little bit of happiness. He was the king of the sky and thunder. Zeus. Well, I have arrived. Zeus screamed, making the entire hall tremble just because of his voice. He looked extremely confident and happy, maybe because of the invitation that was given to them about a feast with beautiful women. Since the war finally ended and the end of the world passed, he no longer needed to worry about anything, so this game was his greatest wish, but he also wanted to enjoy the invite and give his thanks to the young dragon. Brother. Please calm down, you are not here alone. We should show the greatness of Olympus. The man that came with him recommended it. He had a friendly smile on his face, and even a perverted light could be seen in his eyes when he looked at the beautiful women present. He had a well-built body towering over 2 meters, even bigger than Zeus at his side. He wore a white toga covering his left and the same sandals as his brother. On top of his clothing, armor could be seen. It was covering both arms, his right shoulder and a little bit of his dot. It was a deep blue in color, and that suited him rather well because of his short blue hair that only reached his shoulders. His eyes were a lighter tone of blue similar to the sky, and metallic gray trident rested on his back, emitting a menacing vibe. He was the god of the oceans of Greek mythology. Poseidon. Hahaha. You're right, brother. I only got excited because of the many people here. Zeus pretty much screamed his answer, getting a tired sigh from Azazel and Cerziches. Both of them were the ones that knew the pair of brothers the most. Haha. Well, I can't blame you, just look at all the beautiful women present. It would be an insult to not become excited. Poseidon commented as he looked at the woman. He looked closer at each of them, only getting angry looks from each of them except Gabriel. Mia and Karasuba had their swords drawn with a matching aura radiating from them. At the increase in killing intent, the god of the sea sweated heavily and turned his whole body around, his face pale. Angry women were the worst possible threat in the world. Hahaha. Look at you. You look like a scared little animal. Azazel laughed once again loudly. True brother, it seems you still have a trauma with women. Hahaha. Zeus laughed once again, accompanying the fallen in his mockery. HMPH. You sure are one to talk, brother. Hera doesn't even look at you. Zeus froze, his previous excited look froze with him as well. TFFFT. Azazel laughed at Zeus. And you as a boy, at least I am not single, and no woman leaves me after a night. Poseidon hit the nail right in the head. TFFT. Haha. Hahaha. Zeus recovered, with tears in his eyes he laughed at the misery of the fallen. By now Azazel had a defeated look in his face, a depressing feeling emanated from him. The karma, the sweet, sweet karma. Hahaha. Betrayal, Vali and Issei laughed as well, happy that someone taught him his place. The rest of the guests were also discreetly laughing. The women giggling and the men doing their best not to end up as Zeus, Betrayal and the young dragons. They found the retort from Poseidon too funny. Issei was happy everyone was having a great time until one last portal was opened and the circle had the same heat as the sun. Emerging from it stood 3 individuals. All which Issei had personally met but not the last one. The first was a woman who looked exactly like her daughter, Ravel, but in her early 20s with the same blonde hair and blue eyes, with the only exception of her hair being done up very high with ornate hair decorations. She had a royal red dress that hugged her body and showed her power and beauty. The second was a tall and handsome young man in his early 20s with short blonde hair and dark blue eyes. His outfit consists of a burgundy blazer with gold embroidery on the right with matching pants and black dress shoes. Underneath his open blazer is a white dress shirt that is not fully buttoned, just one button short, giving a slight view to him. He was Riser Phoenix, middle son of the Phoenix family. Next to him was a voluptuous woman with long, wavy purple hair that fell all the way down her back and matching eyes. At the front, the right side of her hair falls over her breast and covers her right eye, while the left side falls near the top of her skirt. Her attire is a dress consisting of a navy blue tunic top with gold accents and a pale blue skirt with open sides, black shoes, and over-matching thigh-high stockings with garter belts. The top reveals much of her cleavage and is held with a gold choker with blue and red jewels. Over this, she wears a wide overcoat with black and gold accents and matching pauldrons. For accessories, she wears a black headband with a red-orange jewel over her forehead to keep her long hair in place and wields a staff-like scepter in battle. For cosmetics, she had purple tick and nail polish, matching her eyes and hair. She was Ubeluna, aka the Bomb Queen and Riser Phoenix's queen. Riser saw the dragon and walked over to him before extending a hand. Pleasure to see you again, Issei. Issei smiled as he shook his hand. Good to see you as well, Riser, and it's good to see that you and your family are doing well since the war. Please sit and relax. dinner will be served shortly. Riser and Ubeluna nodded before sitting at the table with the others, before seeing Ravel talk with her mother, and she seemed to be happy with what they were talking about before they made their way to the table. Issei went to the head of the table and got their attention. First off, I would like to thank you all for accepting my invitation and joining me for this business dinner, but first I believe you all must be hungry, so let's get some food on those plates. He whistled as if signaling someone and the doors burst open with Yum and many of the other Sekirei playing out with different carts of food. The smell was so good that a few of them were drooling at it. Yum and the others bowed before some of the most powerful beings and placed food on their plates. Aden, Zeus, Azazel tried to get them to blow on their food to cool it down until a glare from Issei put them in their place. Seeing the intensity of the aura, they decided not to test him. Issei gave a smile in thanks. Serzich's, Milica's, Michael, Gabriel, and a few of the others were surprised by this new side of Issei. The mannerisms that he displayed were thanks to both the training at the Grimmery Mansion and a few lessons from Ravel and Mia. As everyone ate their meal, they were happy to meet outside of work and prepare for the game, but some were a bit curious why Issei invited them in the first place. Issei decided to begin with a bit of small talk. So how are the preparations for the games going? Ajuka was excited since it was under his name. Well. Until Azazel stole his thunder. Everything's running smoothly and we should be ready I'd say in a month, but I've got to ask Issei. How in the world can you afford this inn and make it look like a 5-star hotel? Some of the members were a bit curious. Well, it has to do with having the right connections, and this place was originally an inn, but Mia and I had a conversation about how we should try to improve a few things, but still keep the homely feeling that this inn still has. It also helps that I'm in charge of running things at MBI now. Thanks to Ravels, Matsu, Kachos, and my scientists. Including my other Sekirei working there to help the city. Azazel did a spit take and coughed until a tiny hand hit his back as he looked and saw Undine patting his back. Are you okay, sir? Azazel nodded and then asked his question. You're in charge of MBI how? A chuckle brought his attention to Karasuba enjoying some meat and answered his question. That simple. He's the one who won the Sekirei plan and killed the bastard Manaka after he went out of control thanks to Vali's old man. Many looked at Vali who said. Rizavam. Long story. Many accepted the answer, but a few were curious about what took place, but Milica's broke the silence with a question that shocked them. Big brother, who's that girl on your lap? Many looked at Issei and saw a girl wearing a maid outfit, but what caught their attention the most was her hair and eyes. Half of her hair was white and the other half was red. Her eyes were also mismatched since the opposite colored eyes were on the opposite side of her head. Issei patted her head and rubbed it, making her close her eyes and sigh in happiness as her father gave her love. Well, she's actually my daughter. What? Issei covered his girl's ears as they echoed across the inn. She's only about 7 years old, but she's a bit smarter than most kids her age since her mind aged a bit due to her genes from her mother's side. Serzich's asked the million-dollar question. Who's the mother? Undine went over to Kagari and Akitsu. Mama Kagari and Mommy Akitsu. And my daddy is him. She pointed to Issei before hugging her mothers before going back to Issei and hugging him. Many of the girls awed at the daughter and father moment, while some of those who have children shed a few manly tears as they remembered the good old days of taking care of their children before they grew up. Issei smiled at his little angel before he saw Milica's and Kunu were done with dinner before he had an idea. Grafia. Yusaka. Would you mind if Undine showed Milica's and Kunu around the inn? And before you ask, Akitsu and Kagari would be more than happy to keep an eye on them, right girls? Akitsu and Kagari nodded. We would love to look after them, but only if it's okay with you. Grafia and Yusaka looked at the two, and their eyes were begging with excitement before they both sighed. Alright, but tell us everything later, okay, and do what they say, understood? The two nodded. Yes, Mom. They got out of their seats, and Undine joined them before moving with Akitsu and Kagari for their tour of the inn. Issei sent a thankful smile to them as they led the children away. Issei then looked at the others and noticed that a majority of them were done. If any of you are full, we still have dessert, so please be wary of this. Many of them really enjoyed their meals, while some of them were a bit curious about the point of the meeting, but they held their questions until they were done eating. After the meal, everyone was famished and the kids enjoyed the dessert with their dinner, and this time Roigun asked if she could take the kids to rest in one of the other rooms, which their mothers and fathers agreed to before she escorted them out. The dishes were cleared, and many of them sent their thanks to the women and Issei for providing a wonderful meal. A few of the single boys tried to give them their phone numbers, but they were either politely declined when flashing their rings or took the paper before disposing of it in their own way. Karasuba made them piss themselves when she slightly drew her sword out of her scabbard and put it back in before the paper was shredded to pieces. Many sweat dropped at the skills behind her swordsmanship. Don't underestimate her. Issei decided to let them relax before moving on to the main point of this meeting. I would like to thank you all for being patient with me until the business part of the meeting. I do have a few announcements along with some good news and some very unfortunate that might be a bit too much for a few, so please do control yourselves. They heard the seriousness in his voice until a screen appeared behind him. I would like to introduce to you all a new way to take care of the biggest issue many of us leaders have to face every day. Paperwork. Many cringed at the thought of the endless stacks of paper with so many ridiculous requests until they got to the important matters. Issei saw this and knew he reeled them in. Scientists have developed a way for this crisis to be averted, and that's actually thanks to this new system that can go through all of the paperwork and analyze the paperwork and separate it into piles that are actually worth looking into or for those that were junk mail. It took some ingenuity along with many trials and errors, but they were able to work out the kinks and make it work. I would like to extend this to the underworld, Grigori, Heaven, and many of the other factions that have to deal with this type of work every day, but for a fair price. Surzich's business instincts kicked in and he asked. What is it? Issei put his hands in front of his mouth and his elbows were on the table as he stared into Surzich's eyes before he laughed and prepped a small list from his suit. Only a few things. 1. Changing the name of my TV show. I want to show everyone I'm not the same person I was before that I kept shouting off certain words. I have a name in mind if you're interested in hearing it. Surzich's and Azazel nodded before asking. What is the new name you have in mind? Issei summoned another piece of paper and threw it to Azazel, who caught it and opened it to read the Draconic King of the Winds and Wings. He looked at Issei and smiled. It's in. Issei thanked him before moving to the next topic. Second, the marriage contract between Issei Haidu with the following individuals is nullified. The individuals are Rias Gremory, Akeno Himejima, Kaneko Taoju, Asia Argento, Zenobia Quarta, and Irina Shidu. Side note. I would like to transfer the land I gained from the Gremory family to Shinto Tito so I can expand my territory. Would that suffice for you, Lord and Lady Gremory? Lord and Lady Gremory nodded but asked the boy. Why did you destroy the marriage contracts between them? Issei didn't say anything but had a dark glare on his face until he got up and summoned the boosted gear. Now do it. The green light appeared before them and it displayed what Azazel and Ajuka presumed to be in Issei's point of view. Flashback. Sitting on the biggest couch in the room were the two women he was looking for. But both of them were leaning their entire weight upon the man he saw before, with a blush on his cheeks and a stupid smile on his face. Both women were wrapping themselves around him like a snake about to eat their prey. Their eyes were filled with happiness and enjoyment. The kind of happiness he had seen when he made Akeno reconcile with her father and when he declared his love to Rias in the Orc. Rias, Akeno. I mean, I know you both like me, but please, not here. We need to check some papers as well as pass them to our professors. The man talked as he blushed. We can do this tomorrow. After all, I promised to go on a date with both of you. The man said towards the two women at both sides of him, pride filled his voice and a smile adorned his face. How could he not be like that? Two of the most beautiful women he ever laid eyes upon were fighting for him. Answering his question, Akeno spoke up in a flirty voice. Akeno hummed seductively. What are you talking about, Ryaji? You want this as much as we wanted. So, let's take a break, Akeno muttered the last words with a sensual voice that made the now named Ryaji blush even more. Gathering courage, Ryaji decided to go for it. But before something could happen, an angry voice was heard right behind him. He listened to the furious voice of the other woman by his side. Akeno. What do you think you're doing, trying to seduce him in front of me? Angrily, Rhea stepped in before he could try something. Feeling scared of her, he did not do a thing, he just sat there, not moving a muscle. Then she said with a voice filled with quality. I will show you who is the best among us, Ryaji. The woman started to move. She was slowly showing her well-endowed curves, making Ryaji swallow his spit. But before he managed to achieve her goal, a voice was heard, said voice being Akeno. Rias. Trying to get on him without me? Sorry, but I will not let you. Throwing herself at him, she stopped the advances of the red-haired. He fell onto the couch, Akeno on top of him in a really easy to misunderstand position. Rias, so as not to fall onto the ground, quickly stood up. On seeing the image in front of her, she was filled with anger and fury. Akeno. If you do not stop now, I will have to get him off you by force. You know I love him. So why do you always want the same thing as I do? With a nice smile on her face, Rias screamed, anger clearly visible in her eyes. Her emotions slowly changed her eyes into a red color. Ryaji felt a chill run up his spine and started to sweat bullets, but Akeno didn't even hesitate. What do you mean by saying that I want him just because you love him? He was the first guy I met who didn't have a disgusting look in his eyes. He did not look at me like a piece of meat, really kind as well. Just look at him, he is manly, good-looking, and doesn't look at me like a piece of trash would do. How could I not fall for him? With a serious tone of voice the black-haired woman spoke up, not knowing how impactful her words were in the good sense and the bad sense. Riaz felt her blood boil at those words, but she knew she was right. That was also one of the many reasons why she fell in love with Ryuji. Calming herself down she looked at them clear-headed. Something that surprised at both in front of her. She let out a long breath of air, trying to calm herself down before she did something stupid. Once relaxed she looked at both of them, especially at Akeno, and said with a resolute voice. But for a brown-haired boy it sounded sharp, merciless, and dug straight into his heart. True, the fact that he isn't a pervert or drools over merely our side is truly a blessing. Her voice is calm and sharp. Much better than any man I had ever met, that's for sure. She asserted. It's also true that he is manly, decisive, and kind. These are also a few of the reasons I love him. But first and foremost is the fact that he is not dumb, naive, pervert like someone Akeno and I know. Akeno furrowed her brows at the remembrance of that man. Certainly compared to anyone else, especially to him, he truly is above in all aspects. Especially in the looks department. Akeno's voice was flirty at the end. I have to concur that him not being a dumb pervert or a maniac obsessed with is the greatest blessing we could have. Finishing the comment of Riaz, Akeno spoke with a cold voice. Unknowingly how much damage had her words done to someone. Also, it's nice for him to understand our intentions and not to explain them with a big sign over our heads. I'm glad you figured them out, Ryuji. Truly something I want in the future for the man I love, Riaz told him. Well, let's keep going. I need you if you want me to do the work. It's quite late and the work needs to be done, so, Ryuji putting her forward she begged for the dot. Answering her, he stood up from the couch and walked towards the red-haired beauty. Leaving a pouty Akeno on the couch. Quickly stealing her, he had Riaz. The sound of connecting was the only thing that could be heard. But that scene was something that was burned into the mind of our spectator. That scene of Riaz singing that man made the brown-haired boy empty. He truly didn't understand why. Was it because of the words both of them had said about him? Was it truly because he was a fool, a pervert, naive and dumb? His thought stopped when he looked back to the scene of the dot, but this time with eyes devoid of any light, like those of a corpse. They quickly became more intoxicating. Tongues started to fight a battle for dominance. After a while, the woman broke and she was in need of air. But she felt that compared to someone he wasn't that good of an ear. Getting rid of the thought, she quickly looked over to him. Only to be taken by surprise when Akeno jumped towards him and at him even more fervently. She was more daring than Riaz, of that he was sure. Quickly breaking them, Akeno said. You who are really quite the charmer, aren't you? To make Riaz ask for it is quite impressive. But I will show you who is the bester among us two. She leaned forward, she was searching for him. She had him for the third time, but she felt something was missing from the. However, she became more passionate. Being a sadist, she took control of the battlefield really fast. But she decided to break it before the red-haired got jealous and tried something. That will make her feel even more competitive. Ryuji felt extremely good. He just had two beauties. Two of the most beautiful women he had ever seen in his life. He turned towards the clock sitting at his desk, 5:30 p.m. The time they spent talking and singing was too much. Now they only had 30 minutes before their deadline. Sprinting towards his desk, he decided to start working as fast as he could. Noticing that, Akeno and Riaz also looked at the clock and quickly started to fill papers in. Thinking of a certain boy but erasing the thought. They concentrated on the task before the deadline arrived. Surziches, Graphia, Lord and Lady Gremory, combined with Azazel and Barakiel, were shocked at the video, and they looked at Issei in hopes that it was fake, but the sadness in his eyes were all that they needed to see to realize that their daughter's sister in Surziches' case cheated on Issei. The projection changed to Issei in a park where he hid behind a bush while Asia, Zenobia, Kaneko, and Irina were walking while they were deep in a conversation. Continue flashback. Hey Asia, what do you think of these? Quite beautiful, right? The boy I like gifted them to me. Beautiful, aren't they? That voice was of Irina Shidu, the childhood friend of Issei. She was happily jumping around with over 100 roses on her hands, carefully ordered in a couple of bouquets. Answering instead of Asia, Zenobia talked. Why do you feel so prideful? Isn't it a sin? You'll fall, you know, Irina. Besides, he gifted them to you so that you could agree to become his girlfriend. Zenobia quickly countered Irina. True, but Ryudro is so sweet, nice, and gentlemanly. Besides, he always spends time with me, I love him. Her voice sounded sweet and dreamy. The blush was on her cheeks. She was bringing both hands towards her face, trying to cover her blush. Looking at her, Asia said. Irina-san, Zenobia-san. It's true that the gifts were beautiful, but still I do not think you should keep saying it. Both of you have boyfriends and I believe that if Ryutaro-san and Saoji-san were to hear you they would start fighting. Shyly talking, Asia gave her own advice. Ah. Both of them screamed at the same time. They realized that her words were true. Even though they are brothers, they are extremely competitive towards each other. Last time they barely stopped them. Changing the subject of the talk, Zenobia quickly teased Asia. Oh. So Asia, what about Ken? You two have been quite lovey-dovey recently. Doesn't he help you with the club work? Also, there's a rumor that says that the two of you were holding hands and evening. So is it true? Skillfully, Zenobia asked Asia. Getting the constant nods of an excited Irina. Well just she made a mess thanks to that comment. Yes, those rumors are actually true. Asia answered with honesty despite a red face. Suddenly the fourth figure accompanying them spoke up. Asia senpai daring. She was a short white-haired girl, she was eating her candy, and her voice was almost without a trace of emotion. In response Asia went even redder and hid behind Zenobia. Through Kaneko-chan, but don't you also have someone? If my memory isn't wrong, someone from the same year but from a different class. I believe his name was Hijama. Taken by surprise by Zenovia's sudden remark, Kaneko widened her little eyes. How do you know about that? Stuttering in her response, Kaneko blushed. So the rumor was true. You were like the youngest brother of Saoji and Ryutaro. Irina started with a face full of surprise. Kaneko just nodded and confirmed the rumors. While continuing their walk, Irina made a question that made the hidden brown-haired boy react. Suo. What do you like about Kaneko-chan? She answered at a speed faster than a knight's. He is no pervert. I hate perverts. Especially perverted senpai. He's the worst of the worst, real scum. WSHH. Quite the rude words towards Ice-kun there. But I have to agree. I hate how he's always thinking about doing something perverted. Give me the creep. She had a face filled with slight disgust. Don't be that cruel towards Ice. Those words made Issei smile slightly. At least, someone cared about him and didn't spit behind his back. However, that smile turned into a scowl. Although he is really perverted and we all hate that about him. He's still kind. So you could say it somehow counters it. Zenobia said, but the stares from Irina and Kaneko and even the slight glare of Asia made her retract her words. Okay. Don't look at me with those eyes. She raised both arms up. I mean sure, he really is dumb and foolish to the extreme, even for me to say. Let's not mention perverted and even lustful. But his kindness was always a good trait. Even though he has many more bad ones than good ones. Zenobia said, but Kaneko replied with a tone filled with sarcasm and scorn. One good, everything else bad. That caused Asia and Irina to giggle and Zenobia to say. That hurt Issei's heart deeply, truly it did. Well that's true. She said without any remorse in her face. Well, now that we have someone that's not bad to us, you could say that all those bad memories will be gone. The blue-haired said to them. Causing the rest of the girls to nod and loudly say. True, much better than before. As they walked away, they didn't realize they destroyed the last of Issei's resistance. Then flashback. A few bursts of multiple energies filled the room as Gabriel, Michael, Yusaka, Kuroka, Auden, Riser, and Lady Phoenix were extremely disappointed in the girls for how they betrayed the one man who gave everything for them. He fought, bled, and almost and did die multiple times for them, but he never asked for anything in return. He always gave them a smile and swore to take their burdens and place it on his shoulders. Heck, he even asked Michael to allow Asia and Zenobia to pray despite being devils. Issei calmed them down and began to tell them about his adventures in the city and why he wished to sever the contracts with them. Everyone respected his decision, but they didn't mean they weren't going to punish them. Issei noticed this but moved on to the third wish on his list. I would like to create a few buildings in the underworld that would be a wonderful way for the wealthy to spend their money, children to have fun, and teenagers going out more. I want to create a couple of manga cafes that allow anyone but 18 or older for the more mature mangas and to enjoy some lunch or a quick breakfast to start their day. Pachinko parlors. There is basically a casino where an arcade is installed on a different floor so the teenagers can enjoy a wonderful time. The last item on the list is that I want to build in the underworld an amusement water park. That way families can enjoy some thrill and or water rides, and before you ask Surziches, I already checked the budget and after going through my managers, we can make it work. All we need is your approval and we can begin construction immediately. He says this while passing the papers to Surziches who looked at them before looking at his team and saw them nod in agreement. Also because they want the system to take care of their paperwork issues. Surziches looked at Issei and nodded. Very well. We accept the terms. Issei shook his hand as well. Pleasure doing business with you and you don't have to worry about construction, we have a special team ready to get it done in 2 to 3 days. He took out his phone and tapped on a number before it rang. Issei looked at the side and said. Begin construction and make sure there are no civilians in the area. Can't have collateral damage, understood. He heard the reply he wanted, and with the one in charge of the construction, they'll make sure everything is running smoothly. Issei looks at the time and notices it beginning to get late. I do thank you all for coming here for this meal, but I'm afraid many of us still have work to do, but don't worry, the new system will be installed in your offices by tomorrow afternoon, so have a wonderful night everyone, and thank you again for coming out. The leaders came and the Olympian, Norse, and the Phoenix clan said their goodbyes and condolences before they headed out. Azazel and Barakiel offered their condolences about Akeno before heading out. Gabriel and Seraphol looked at each other and nodded before walking to Issei, and they both hugged him. They said they were sorry they couldn't help him in his time of need, but were happy to see him doing good. Before they let go, Gabriel led him, which surprised Michael and Seraphol until the Satan Leviathan pulled her away and ate him as well. Issei's mouth was invaded by Seraphol's tongue before he fought back and dominated her tongue before exploring her mouth. She moaned as the two of them ate deeply before Seraphol pulled away and smiled at Issei before whispering something in his ears that made him grin in interest. She left with a twirl of her wand and disappeared into her own personal circle. See you at the game, Issei. She vanished and Gabriel vanished after her brother before giving one last kind look at Issei. Farewell for now, Issei. The others disappeared into their own respective portals until it was just Surzich's, Grafia, Amaterasu, Yasaka, and Kuroka. Milikas and Kunu were dead tired in their mother's arms. Issei and Surzich's stared at each other until the Mao Lucifer bowed to Issei, surprising the others. I'm sorry for my sister's actions. Forgive me for not being able to help you in your time of need. Issei put a hand on his shoulder and brought him into a big hug. The two brothers hugged it out before separating from each other. No matter what Surzich's. I may not be marrying Riaz, but I'm still more than happy to call you my big brother. You helped me become the man I am today, so I should be the one who should thank you. Grafia had a happy smile when she saw her husband, the one she saw as a little brother, get along well. Amaterasu was happy the two were able to still be friends, while Yasaka and Kuroka looked at Issei before Surzich's separated from him. Thank you for the dinner. You were a most gracious host. See you soon in the games, Issei Haidu, my little brother. They vanished in a bright red magic circle, and then there were only three left. Yasaka gave Kunu to Amaterasu before walking up to Issei and him. Issei accepted and reciprocated with more emotion. Kuroka and Amaterasu saw the between them and were blushing from the love between them. Yasaka separates and Kuroka takes over as Issei gets her back. Aniko was adventurous and slipped her tongue in his mouth and fought him until her ears perked up and twitched in excitement. The two separated with a heavy blush on both of their cheeks as they looked into each other's eyes before they went their way. Kuroka looked at him and Issei saw what she was saying in her eyes and only nodded in return. Amaterasu opened a portal before the three of them left the dragon's home. A pair of dark hands wrapped him and brought him into his home office. Issei was then turned around to see Yahin and Yomi in front of him with some very white attire. You have no idea how long we waited for this, Issei. Issei liked what he saw and spread his arms out, and Yomi placed herself in his lap while Yahin went from behind him and edged his cheek. There's nothing to report from Kuo Town, but for some reason I feel an interesting aura, but I can't seem to pinpoint it. Issei nodded in understanding and pulled the two in a hug. I'm sorry for making you do these hidden trips, but I have a feeling that something seems off in Kuo, but we can worry about it later. I still thank you both from the bottom of my heart. Yomi hugs his neck and snuggles into it. We'd do anything for you. So don't ever forget it. Yahin took off his suit and placed it in his closet. Now let's see what kind of weapon you have in that suit. Issei had a wonderful dinner with some of the most powerful people in the world and was about to receive special treatment from his girls. Kuo Town. Haidu Mansion. Rainer, in Ria's body this time, was going through her plan to the others. Alright, listen up. Let's go over the plan one last time. Step 1. I take over the pathetic nun's body. Check. Step 2. Bring you two back to suitable bodies. Check. Step 3. Now here's where it gets tricky. She looks at the tubes and sees 3 bodies being made, but all of them were unique in their own way. The first one had Rainer's normal black hair and face while her breast was around Akeno's, but a few cups more. There was a hint of the power of destruction radiating from the body. The second one was similar to Kalriner's old body with the same head and hair, but she was a bit bigger. Her body was generating holy lightning and holy energy. Finally, Middle's new body was similar to Akeno's and Ria's proportions, but the new body still had her face but more mature. Her body was flowing with Senjutsu as the three went on with their plan. Rainer turned to the others. We need to use only our feathers, but we need more power, and the only way to do that is by using their blood to give our new bodies more strength. Thanks to a very generous friend of ours, we'll be able to meet Issei as soon as the games begin. Isn't that right, office? The purple-haired loli came out of the shadows and looked at the girls. The plan is still on, and it seems they know about Riaz and her friends cheating on Issei. I can already see Zenobia and Asia being unable to pray because of Michael. Now then, the spell you three used on the girls will allow you to live in them, but once your bodies are complete, you'll need to sacrifice one girl to become the one who gives birth to your new body, while the other is taken away with all of their magic, making them weak as a human newborn. In other words, if Rainer were in Asia at Riaz, then her new body would be born from the body she's possessing, while the other is drained of their magic and will be knocked unconscious. Thanks to the addition of the other bloods from the girls that are injected in your new bodies, you three will be able to use all of their powers. The office looks outside into the town and puts a hand on the window. Just 2 more months and we'll see each other again, Issei. My mate. She looks at the girls and conjures a little, revealing the girls' boyfriends. I do hope they rest to say their goodbyes, because once the final 8 are announced, then the real game begins where it truly begins. Her hands glow with purple fire as her body grows to a more mature look, with her body being similar to Serafal and has a dark aura. A fight for life or death. Who's truly the greatest king of them all? She looks at the 3 and returns to her normal form. Now it's best we make sure no one suspects this, not even the Damper and Knight. Alright then, let the game begin. We've made the first move. Your turn, Issei. Show us your power and rise to the top. Show the world who you truly are. The game will have a dark ending for Riaz and her team. What will happen? Who will perish? Find out later in the next update. Thanks for watching this video. If you really enjoy this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. Don't forget to support and follow the Nefarious Doctor for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story, link in the description. See you in the next video. Goodbye.